Hello students. So here we start the second part of our first chapter. The previous video I ended up with the meaning of diagrams and graphs. So now we'll continue with the importance of diagrams and graphs in economics. Difficult and complicated information is made easier by drawing diagrams and clear by graphs. So you can see over here, like in the previous video, I explained you about diagrams and graphs that is mainly made so that the lay persons can easily understand just by seeing the diagrams and the graphs, whatever statistical information is written. So for that it's written difficult and complicated information. Complicated means too much information which is given that is made easily with the help of drawing. So lay persons can easily understand when diagrams are drawn, and it is easily clear also by drawing graphs. Economic parameters of various years is observed in single diagram or graph. You have seen diagrams and graphs before also. In this same chapter also you can see diagrams and graphs. So of many different years, for example 6 years or of 7 years, together in one diagram itself or a graph itself we can see it. For that it's written economic parameters of various years. Changes in various sectors can be easily understood. We can see changes when in the same chapter bar diagram is there, clustered one is there. So in the bar diagrams and all you can see whatever changes are there in various years that can be easily understood just by seeing the graph. Comparison can be done easily between groups and regions, etc. Between various groups, regions, easily a comparison can be done just by comparing two graphs together. Whereas if it is written in a theoretical form, then it takes too much time to read the whole content. But when the diagram is drawn or a graph is drawn, easily the comparison can be done between two graphs. Time and effort is saved in explaining, and the reader can also understand it easily. As I told you earlier that when the whole thing is theoretically written, it takes too much time. So for that when diagram is drawn, it takes less time. For that it's written time and effort is saved in explaining. The one who is explaining, for them also it can be easily explained. When a graph is drawn, the reader can also understand it easily. Because before in the meaning it came that lay persons can easily understand. They don't need the help of anybody else to understand. For that it's written the reader can also understand it easily. Different principles can be easily understood. Like you have learned it in your 11th standard, different expansion and contraction of demand and supply. For all these things, graphs were there. Price elasticity, for that also graph. Irregular fluctuation in agriculture. Fluctuation means ups and downs which can be seen in agriculture sector. That is irregular. Means depending on the climatic changes, depending on the different cultivation reasons, fluctuations can be seen in agricultural sector. Sometimes more production, sometimes less production. And the other one is regular fluctuation in industry. Regular, there is a depending on different months, the fluctuations can be seen in industrial sector. These things, graphs can be drawn, and these all different principles. For that it's written different principles. That is expansion of demand and supply, contraction, price elasticity. These all are the different principles that can be easily understood when we explain it in the form of a graph. Aspects to be considered while drawing a diagram. Aspects means the things, the points which should be considered, which should be kept in mind while drawing a diagram or a graph. So the first one, choice of type of diagram or graph and their presentation. As I told you earlier, in this chapter you will see different types of diagrams and graphs are there. In diagrams also pictograms, scattered, different types you can see in this chapter as we'll proceed. And in graphs also bar graph, clustered graph, these all different types of graphs. So for that it's written that it has, depending on the information, the choice has to be made that which type of diagram a person should make or which type of graph should be made and their presentation. Presentation means to present, to draw that diagram or graph. Next is clarity, because whenever as in your previous classes also you have made graphs, so a graph should always be clear. The whatever information which is written, that should be neat and clear, so that the lay persons, the ones who are not related to this field, they can easily understand. Whatever figures are written, that should be clear. The graph, the bar which is made, that all should be clear in the diagram. Scales and measure. This also we can see in a graph. Whatever scales, that is from the 0 point, the beginning, from the x-axis and the y-axis where it meets, that is the point 0. So in between whatever measurement is taken, that should be taken properly. Anyway, taking it wherever that is not right on the x-axis, that should be properly taken with the help of scale. So for that it's written, scales and measures should be taken proper. Representation of axis, that is, it has to be represented that which line is representing x-axis and which line is representing the y-axis. So for that it's written, that has to be represented. It has to be written in a graph. Data table and source of data. Like you have seen in your previous class also, whenever any graph is made or any diagram is made, a data table is also made with it. The data table is the information, because that is the source. Because to make any graph, we need information, and that information is written in the form of a table, which we say it as data table, and that is considered as the source. Source means the beginning, the reason to make that graph. So with any of the graph, you will see it, a table is drawn first, and with that table, the graph is also made. Method of calculating the data. When the picture is drawn with proper information, it becomes appropriate to state the numbers in detail. So the whatever calculation is done, that can be done properly if it is done with proper information. So for that, the method is also given, that how the information is obtained in that data table. If you want, you can refer it to the tables which are given in this chapter also, in your previous textbook also. If you'll refer, the method is also mentioned, that how that source is obtained for making that particular graph. So when the picture is not drawn from self-explanatory data, self-explanatory data means as in a graph it came, that graph is not a self-explanatory, because we need the help of experts to make it understand about the information which is drawn in a graph. For that it's written, picture is not drawn from self-explanatory data, because you can see in meanings of diagrams and graphs it came, that for drawing a diagram, thorough information is not needed, whereas when a graph is drawn, thorough information is needed, means proper information is needed to draw a graph. For that it's told as, it is not self-explanatory data, but is drawn from data simplified from statistical formula. Means with proper formula, the data, that is the data table is made. It is appropriate to state the statistical method briefly. Means with whatever statistical formula the information is obtained, with that same information the graph is also drawn. With whatever figures, with whatever numbers which are there, that has to be presented in the x-axis and the y-axis, and then the graph is made properly. So for that it's told as method of calculating the data, that is the data table, which we say in other words, that is the source of data for making the graph. So students, here we end up the aspects which are to be considered while drawing a diagram.